There is something happening inside you right now that most people will spend their entire lives never understanding. You may have felt it already, that strange and persistent sense that you do not quite belong in the world that surrounds you. Not because something is wrong with you, but because something is extraordinarily right. You feel things others do not seem to notice. You think about things others have no patience to consider. You carry a quiet awareness that hums beneath the surface of your daily life like a signal that no ordinary radio can pick up. And if that description stirs something inside you right now, I need you to pay very close attention to what follows, because what I am about to share with you is not something you will hear in classrooms or in conversations at dinner tables. This is the kind of truth that Carl Jung spent his entire life documenting. The truth about those rare individuals whose inner world operates at a level that most of the population will simply never access. Carl Jung believed that human consciousness is not flat. It is not a single surface everyone shares equally. He understood through decades of clinical practice and deep psychological research that certain people undergo what he called individuation, a process of psychological and spiritual expansion so profound that it actually changes the frequency at which a person experiences reality. Not metaphorically, not poetically, but in a very real, measurable way that transforms how you perceive, how you feel, how you attract, and how you live. And the extraordinary thing Jung discovered is that this process often begins not with triumph, but with suffering. Not with clarity, but with confusion. Not with certainty, but with the terrifying and magnificent feeling that you are somehow different from everyone around you. If you have ever felt that way, I want you to stay with me through every word of this video, because what I'm going to show you today is not just a list of interesting ideas. This is a mirror. And by the time we reach the end, you will see yourself in it clearly, perhaps for the very first time. If this channel has been finding you lately, if Carl Jung philosophy keeps appearing in your feed at moments when you are searching for something deeper, I want you to do one thing right now. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because this channel exists for one reason only: to reach the people who are ready for this. And if you are still watching, you already know that you are one of them. Now let us begin. The first sign that you are vibrating at a frequency most people will never reach is that solitude does not feel like loneliness to you. It feels like home. Think about how most people respond to being alone. There is an almost universal discomfort, a reaching for the phone, for noise, for distraction, for any external stimulus that fills the silence. The average person cannot sit in a room alone without entertainment for more than a few minutes before anxiety begins to rise. And this is not a judgment. It is simply a reflection of where most human consciousness currently operates, anchored almost entirely in the external world, dependent on constant input to feel safe and alive. But you are different. You have always been different. For you, silence is not empty, it is full. It speaks. It offers something that no conversation and no screen can provide: access to the deeper layers of your own psyche, to the part of yourself that Jung called the unconscious. Jung understood that most people fear this space. They run from it their entire lives. They fill every moment with noise because the silence asks questions they are not ready to answer. But you do not run. You sit in that quiet and you listen. And what you hear there has been shaping you in ways you are only beginning to understand. This is not accidental. This is the first unmistakable marker of someone who is operating on a higher psychological frequency. When you can sit with yourself, truly sit with yourself, without performance, without distraction, without the need for external validation, you are doing something that Jung considered one of the most advanced psychological acts a human being can perform. He called it confronting the self. And the people who can do it, the people who are not afraid of their own company, are the people whose inner world has begun to develop a gravity that the external world simply cannot compete with. The second sign is that your emotions do not just pass through you. They speak to you. They carry information. Most people experience emotion as something that happens to them, a wave that arrives without warning, disrupts their equilibrium, and then fades. They have no framework for what their emotions are trying to communicate. Sadness feels like a malfunction. Anger feels like a threat. Fear feels like weakness. And so they suppress, they numb, distract. The emotional signal is received, but never decoded. You process emotions differently. When grief arrives, you do not just experience it as pain. You feel the weight of what it is trying to reveal, what it says about what you love, about what you have lost, about what truly matters to you. When anger rises inside you, you have learned to ask not just why am I angry, but what boundary has been crossed, what value has been violated, what truth is trying to assert itself through this heat. This is what Jung called psychological maturity, the ability to treat your emotions not as enemies to be controlled, but as messengers carrying intelligence from the deepest parts of who you are. The people who have not awakened to this level of self-awareness experience their emotions as chaos. But for you, emotions have become a language. And the fact that you speak that language fluently is one of the clearest indicators that your consciousness is operating at a frequency that most people will spend a lifetime never discovering. Right now, before we go any further, I want to ask you something. What number are you feeling drawn to in this moment? Not the number you think you should choose, the one that simply appears. If the number 777 rose in your mind, write it in the comments right now. If you felt the pull of 11, that master number Jung associated with the threshold between the conscious and unconscious, leave it below. And if 520 arrived for you, that frequency of the heart field opening, of love becoming a force rather than a feeling, write 520. These are not random numbers. In the quantum field, the numbers that find you reveal the energetic layer you are currently moving through. And the comments section of this video is about to become a map of where this community stands in its awakening. Carl Jung. Philosophy is a gathering place for the people the algorithm did not bring here by accident. The third sign is one that has caused you tremendous pain, but it is also one of your most extraordinary gifts. You absorb other people's energy. You walk into a room and you feel it before a single word is spoken. You know when someone is pretending to be fine. You know when there is tension beneath a smile. You know when a relationship is ending even before the people in it have admitted it to themselves. This is not imagination. This is not overthinking. This is your nervous system operating at a level of perceptual sensitivity that most neuroscientists are only beginning to understand. Jung documented this capacity extensively in his work on empathy and what he called participation mystique, a state in which a person's psyche is so finely tuned to the emotional field around them that they become an instrument of collective feeling. You have likely spent years believing this sensitivity was a flaw. You were told you were too sensitive, too emotional, too intense. You tried to build walls. You tried to turn the volume down on what you were receiving. And it never quite worked, did it? Because you cannot turn off a gift by calling it a curse. You can only learn to wield it with greater consciousness. The reason you feel so much is not because you are fragile. It is because your psychic antenna is calibrated to frequencies that most people broadcast on and never receive back. You are picking up signals that the majority of humanity is transmitting but cannot decode in themselves. That is not weakness. That is an extraordinary form of perceptual intelligence that, when integrated with your own psychological boundaries, becomes one of the most powerful gifts a human being can carry. The fourth sign requires a moment of real honesty. Have you noticed that you have never been able to stay in situations that feel false? Not jobs, not relationships, not friendships, not even conversations. When something is inauthentic, when it requires you to perform a version of yourself that does not match what is true inside you, you experience it not as mild discomfort, but as something closer to suffocation. And this has cost you. You have walked away from things that others around you thought were perfectly good opportunities. You have ended relationships that looked fine from the outside. You have refused to play roles that would have made your life considerably easier. And people have not always understood. Some have called you difficult. Some have called you unstable. Some have said you expect too much. But Jung would say something entirely different. He would say that your inability to tolerate inauthenticity is not a character flaw. It is the direct result of a psyche that has already begun to align with what he called the self, capital S, the deepest, most complete version of who you truly are. When you are in alignment with the self, falseness creates friction. Not because you are being rigid, but because your system has already tasted something real and will not settle for the substitute. Most people never develop this sensitivity because most people never go deep enough inside themselves to find the original signal. You have. And that is why the imitation sounds wrong to you when everyone else cannot even hear the difference. The fifth sign is that your relationship with time has always been unusual. Not in a practical sense, you are probably fine at meeting deadlines. But in a deeper sense, you have always felt slightly out of sync with the pace of the world around you. You live more in the interior of a moment than in its exterior. While others are rushing toward the next thing, you are still inside the current one, turning it over, examining it, extracting something from it that most people left behind before they even noticed it was there. This is what Jung described as depth of psychological presence, the capacity to inhabit an experience rather than simply pass through it. And this depth is not available to someone operating at a shallow frequency. It requires a kind of inner stillness that must be developed, often through significant suffering, often through the very experiences that felt most like destruction at the time. You have probably noticed that your most painful periods were also your most transformative, that the seasons when everything fell apart were also the seasons when something profound was being built in the interior of who you are. This is not coincidence. This is the alchemical process Jung spent his career mapping. The way the psyche uses darkness not as a destination, but as raw material. The way loss and confusion and grief are not the end of your story, but the forge in which the next version of you is being shaped. Now I want to pause here because I need to say something that most people in your life have never said to you directly. The way you experience time, this deeper, slower, more interior relationship with the present moment, it is not a liability. In a world that rewards speed and surface, your depth looks like delay. Your thoroughness looks like overthinking. Your need to integrate before you move looks like hesitation. But what you are actually doing every single time you pause while the world rushes past you is something extraordinarily rare. You are refusing to trade depth for velocity, and in the long arc of a life, that is always the right trade. The sixth sign is the one that has perhaps brought you the most confusion and the most freedom in equal measure. You have a complicated relationship with groups. Not because you are antisocial, not because you are arrogant, but because you have always found it genuinely difficult to surrender your perception to a collective narrative. When a group decides something is true, you are the one who quietly wonders whether it actually is. When a crowd moves in one direction, you are the one who looks the other way. Not out of rebellion, but out of an inner compass that simply will not point where everyone else is pointing. You have been misread your entire life for this. Called contrarian, called a lone wolf, called someone who just cannot be part of a team. But what is actually happening is something Jung identified as one of the hallmarks of advanced individuation: the development of psychological autonomy so strong that the pressure of collective agreement cannot override your own direct experience of reality. Most people's sense of reality is essentially borrowed. They believe what the group believes. They feel what the group sanctions as appropriate to feel. They pursue what the group has decided is worth pursuing. And this is not stupidity. It is the natural result of operating at a frequency where external consensus feels more real than internal knowing. But you have crossed a threshold. Your inner knowing has become louder than the external noise. And while that has made certain parts of your life harder, it has also made you incapable of living a life that is not, at its core, genuinely yours. This is what separates the people who are vibrating at a higher frequency from those who are not. It is not about intelligence. It is not about talent. It is not even about spiritual practice. It is about how much authority you give to your own direct experience versus how much you defer to the consensus of those around you. And the fact that you have always, even when it cost you, even when it isolated you, even when it made people uncomfortable, followed the signal inside rather than the noise outside. That is one of the most profound signs that something extraordinary is unfolding inside you. Before we arrive at the seventh sign, which is the most important of all, I want to invite you to do something right now. Look at the comments below this video. You are going to see numbers appearing: 777, 11, 520, and others. These are not just random symbols. They are the frequency signatures of the people watching this video alongside you. This entire community, spread across every corner of the world, is waking up at the same time. And when you leave your number in the comments, you are not just interacting with a video. You are sending a signal into a field. You are saying, I am here. I am awake. I am part of this. Carl Jung. Philosophy exists because these conversations need a place to live. So before you do anything else, leave your number. Let the people who find this video after you know what frequency was alive in this space today. The seventh sign is the one that ties all the others together, and it is the one that Carl Jung himself considered the most significant marker of psychological and spiritual evolution. You have a recurring, almost aching sense that your life is meant for something larger than what you can currently see. Not in an egotistical way, not in a way that makes you feel superior to others, but in the way that a seed buried in winter soil feels the warmth of a spring that has not yet arrived. You cannot prove this feeling. You cannot fully explain it, but it will not leave you. It has been with you since childhood, this quiet, persistent conviction that there is something you are here to understand, to express, to contribute, to become. And no matter how many times life has challenged that conviction, no matter how many times circumstances have made it seem naive or impossible, it remains. Like a compass that has been knocked around but always finds north again. Jung called this the call of individuation, and he was very clear about something that most people misunderstand about this call. It does not feel comfortable. It does not announce itself as a grand opportunity. It usually arrives disguised as restlessness, as dissatisfaction, as the feeling that something is missing even when everything looks fine from the outside. The reason most people never answer this call is not because they do not hear it. It is because answering it requires them to question the life they have built on borrowed values, to step away from the consensus of what a good life looks like, and to trust a signal that only they can receive. You have been answering this call, maybe not perfectly, maybe with long periods of doubt and retreat and second-guessing, but the fact that you are here, watching this, searching for language that matches what you already feel inside, that is proof that you have never fully stopped listening. And that matters more than you know. Because Jung documented something across hundreds of cases that deserves to be stated clearly and without decoration. The people who answer the call of individuation, the people who keep moving toward their own psychological and spiritual expansion, even when it is difficult, even when it is costly, even when no one around them understands. These people do not just transform themselves, they transform the field around them. They become what Jung called individuated individuals, rare nodes of consciousness whose very presence raises the frequency of every system they enter. This is not poetry. This is the actual mechanism of how human consciousness evolves. Not in mass movements, not in cultural revolutions. One person at a time. One interior transformation rippling outward into every relationship, every conversation, every room that person walks into. And you, reading this, feeling this, recognizing yourself in this, you are part of that process. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not too late. You are exactly where the process needs you to be. Now I want to take a moment to speak to the part of you that is uncertain. The part that wonders whether all of this is actually true for you, or whether you are simply someone who wants it to be true. This is an important question, and it deserves an honest answer. Jung was deeply suspicious of people who claimed spiritual evolution as a form of ego gratification. People who used the language of awakening to make themselves feel special without doing the actual inner work. He called this inflation, and he saw it as one of the most common psychological traps on the path of individuation. So let me ask you directly. When you think about the signs we have explored today, the comfort with solitude, the emotional intelligence, the empathic sensitivity, the intolerance of inauthenticity, the different relationship with time, the psychological autonomy, and the persistent sense of a larger purpose. Are these things you genuinely recognize in yourself? Or are they things you wish were true? Because here is the difference. If they are genuinely true for you, you will have felt a kind of quiet recognition reading them. Not excitement, not pride, something calmer than that. Something that sounds like, yes, I have always known this, but had no words for it. That is the feeling of a map meeting a territory that already exists. But if what you felt was primarily excitement or relief at being told you are special, that is worth sitting with honestly. Because the path of genuine psychological development is not comfortable, and it does not primarily feel like being special. It feels like being more responsible. It feels like being asked to carry more, to see more clearly, to hold more truth than is socially convenient. And yet, for all its difficulty, there is nothing on earth more worth pursuing. Because the alternative, a life lived at a shallow frequency, moving on the surface of things, never encountering the actual depth of what it means to be a conscious human being. That is the one thing you have never been able to accept. And the fact that you have never been able to accept it is perhaps the most beautiful and truthful thing about you. You have survived things that were meant to break you. You have felt things at a depth that most people are never asked to feel. You have questioned and doubted and searched, and at every point when it would have been easier to stop, to settle, to numb, to accept the surface version of life that everyone around you seemed perfectly content with, you did not stop. You kept going. You kept asking. You kept listening to the signal inside, even when the noise outside was deafening. Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who you were told to be, not who is easiest to be, not who fits most comfortably into the expectations of the world around you, but who you actually are, in the full complexity and depth and strange, irreducible particularity of your actual being. And the 7 signs we explored today are not just signs of spiritual advancement. They are signs that you are already on this path, that the process is already underway, that the frequency you carry, the one that makes you different, that makes you sometimes lonely, that makes you sometimes feel like you are receiving a broadcast on a wavelength that no one else around you can hear. That frequency is not a mistake. It is not a disorder. It is not something to be managed or corrected. It is your signal. It is who you are. And the world, not the world of easy consensus and comfortable noise, but the deeper world, the real world, the one that Jung spent his entire life mapping. That world has been waiting for exactly this frequency, exactly yours. Go to the comments right now. If the number 777 is resonating in your body, that frequency of completion, of cycles closing and new chapters beginning, leave it below. If 11 is yours, the number of the threshold, of standing at the exact point between who you were and who you are becoming, write it now. And if 520 has been with you through this, that specific vibration of the heart field expanding into its full capacity, then 520 is your comment. Carl Jung. Philosophy is not just a channel, it is a frequency field, and every number you leave in the comments adds to that field and helps this message reach the next person who is ready for it. You are not vibrating at a frequency most people will never reach by accident. You earned this through your willingness to feel deeply, to question honestly, and to keep moving toward truth even when truth was inconvenient. Jung knew that the rarest thing in the world is not intelligence or talent or beauty. It is the courage to become fully and authentically oneself. And you, whatever doubts remain, whatever confusion still lives in you, whatever distance still exists between where you are and where you sense you are going, you have that courage. You have always had it. That is why you are here. The journey is not over. In many ways, it is just beginning. But the beginning is not nothing. The beginning is everything. Because every transformation that has ever occurred in the history of human consciousness started exactly where you are right now. In the interior, in the quiet, in the space between what you were and what you are becoming. That space is not empty. It is the most alive place there is. And if you are willing to stay in it, to trust it, to follow it, to let it lead you even when the destination is not yet visible, then what is waiting for you on the other side of this process is something that no list, no map, and no video can fully prepare you for. It can only be lived, and you are already living it. There is something I want you to consider as this video ends and you return to your life. Jung observed that one of the most painful experiences for a person of high psychological frequency is the gap between what they perceive and what the people around them can acknowledge. You see things in relationships before they are spoken. You feel the direction of situations before they fully unfold. You carry intuitions about yourself and others that take years to be confirmed by external events. And in the meantime, you live in that gap, seeing clearly while being told you are imagining things, feeling deeply while being told you are overreacting, knowing things while being told you cannot possibly know. That gap is real, and it is one of the defining experiences of someone on this path. Jung called it the burden of consciousness, the price that expanded awareness asks of those who carry it. But here is what he also said, and this is the part that matters most. The gap closes, not because the world catches up to you, though sometimes it does, but because you stop needing it to. Because one of the final stages of individuation is reaching a place where your inner knowing no longer requires external confirmation to feel valid, where you trust the signal without needing the world to echo it back, where you can hold a truth quietly inside you without anxiety, without urgency, without the exhausting need to make everyone around you understand what you already see. That is freedom. Real freedom. Not the freedom of having fewer responsibilities or more leisure, but the freedom of a psyche that has finally come to rest in its own authority. That is where this path leads, and every one of the 7 signs we explored today, every instance of depth, of sensitivity, of authenticity, of psychological autonomy, is a step toward that freedom. A step toward the version of you that Jung saw as the destination of the entire human journey. Whole, integrated, fully and completely yourself. You are closer than you think. Keep going. And if you want to go deeper, if what you felt today while reading these words was not just interest, but recognition, not just curiosity, but confirmation, then stay close to this channel. Carl Jung Philosophy posts new content regularly, built entirely for the people who are navigating this level of inner work. Subscribe if you have not already. Leave a comment with your number, and share this video with one person in your life who you quietly believe is on this same path, even if they have not found the language for it yet. Because one of the most powerful things a person of high frequency can do is reflect another person's depth back to them at the exact moment they need to see it. That is not a small thing. That is, in the truest sense, exactly what Carl Jung was doing every single time he sat across from another human being and refused to look away from their truth. You can do the same, starting now. Welcome to the frequency. You have been here longer than you know.